My sister invited me to her baby shower only to publicly announce that my late husband is the father of her baby. I stared at her in silence until she added, "He chose me over you." I replied, "That's funny. He left me everything in the will." She collapsed as I read the clause that destroyed her inheritance. I should have known Brielle was up to something the moment I saw her name flash on my phone screen. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since my husband, James, died. The silence wasn't out of grief. No, it was heavier than that. It was thick with unspoken words, bitter tension, and an unease I never quite understood. So when she called, her voice dripping with an almost artificial warmth, I hesitated before answering. "Hello, Sienna," she squealed, like we were childhood best friends instead of sisters who had barely tolerated each other for years. "I know it's been a while, but I really want you to come to my baby shower." I blinked. Baby shower? I didn't even know she was pregnant. Brielle had always been the golden child, the one who could set fire to a house and somehow convince everyone that the flames were a beautiful accident. She was charming in the way that made you second-guess your gut instincts. I had spent most of my life standing in her shadow, enduring the small betrayals, the backhanded compliments, the way she twisted people around her little finger while I was left picking up the pieces. And now, after over a year of silence, she wanted me at her baby shower? I almost said no. But then she added, "It would really mean a lot to me." And against my better judgment, I found myself saying, "All right, I'll be there." I regretted it almost instantly. The shower was held at an upscale banquet hall in downtown Charleston. The kind of place with high ceilings, sparkling chandeliers, and a room full of people pretending they weren't judging each other. Brielle never did anything small. If she was going to throw a party, it had to be the event of the season. The second I stepped inside, I felt the eyes. Some curious, some hesitant, some downright guilty. That's when I knew. People knew something I didn't. I made my way through the room, ignoring the fake smiles and half-hearted greetings. There were distant relatives, mutual friends, even some of James' old colleagues. Why were they here? Before I could process it, Brielle spotted me. She was glowing, but not in the way expectant mothers usually did. It was the kind of glow that came from knowing you had the upper hand. "Sienna." She rushed toward me, her arms outstretched like we were close. Like she hadn't spent years treating me like a disposable afterthought. I let her hug me, but I didn't return it. "You look different," she said, her eyes scanning me. I tilted my head. "Do I?" She smiled, but there was something calculated in it. "Come on, I need you up front for the big announcement." My stomach twisted. This wasn't about a baby shower. This was about something else. Something cruel. I followed her toward the center of the room, past a table decorated with pastel-colored gifts and champagne glasses. The air felt charged, like everyone was waiting for something. A waiter handed me a drink, but I barely noticed. Brielle cleared her throat and tapped a spoon against her glass, the sound ringing out through the hall. "First of all, thank you all for being here," she began, her voice sugary sweet. "This pregnancy was unexpected, but it's also the greatest blessing of my life." I barely heard her. My heart was pounding too hard. Then she turned to me, her smile widening. "And I think it's finally time to tell everyone the truth about the father." The room went silent. My breath caught. Brielle placed a hand on her stomach and let out a dramatic sigh, dragging out the moment. She wanted me to squirm. Then she said it. It was James. The words shattered the air like glass. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. I felt the weight of every pair of eyes in the room. My fingers went cold around the untouched champagne flute in my hand. Brielle studied my face, her expression smug. "Oh, come on, Sienna. You had to have known. He chose me over you." There it was. The final K in Faye. A slow murmur rippled through the crowd. Some people gasped. Others shifted uncomfortably, suddenly too fascinated with their drinks. I didn't move. I didn't speak. And that, I think, was what unnerved her the most. She expected an outburst. Tears. Screaming. Maybe even a dramatic exit. Instead, I just smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "That's funny," I said, tilting my head. "He left me everything in the will." The air in the room changed. Brielle's expression faltered, just for a second. "What?" I reached into my clutch and pulled out a neatly folded document. The will. I had kept it with me for reasons I never fully understood until now. As per the final wishes of James Alexander Carter, I read aloud, my voice steady. "All financial assets, properties, and remaining inheritance shall be granted to his lawful wife, Sienna Carter. No other individual shall receive any portion of his estate." Silence. Dead, suffocating silence. Brielle went pale. "You're lying." Her voice cracked. I turned the document around so she could see James' signature at the bottom. "Guess he didn't choose you after all." Gasps. Whispers. The weight of the moment settled over everyone in the room. Brielle staggered, her hand clutching her stomach like the truth physically hurt her. Then, in front of everyone, she collapsed. Brielle hit the floor hard. For a second, no one moved. The silence in the room stretched long and thick, The only sound the sharp clatter of my champagne flute as it slipped from my fingers and shattered against the marble floor. Then, all at once, the room erupted into chaos. "Someone call an ambulance," a voice shrieked. "Oh my God, is she breathing?" Another gasped. People swarmed around Brielle, their expensive heels clicking frantically as they scrambled to help her. Someone, our cousin Leah, I think, dropped to their knees beside her, patting her cheeks as if that would wake her up. I didn't move. My legs felt frozen in place, my fingers still curled around James' Will. I should have felt something. Guilt, maybe. Concern. But all I could do was stare at Brielle's unconscious form, my heart hammering violently against my ribs. A waiter rushed past me, fumbling with his phone, presumably dialing 911. The whole scene felt surreal, like I was standing outside my own body, watching a movie I had no control over. Then, just as suddenly as she went down, Brielle let out a weak, gasping breath. Her eyelids fluttered, her fingers twitching against the fabric of her designer maternity dress. The room stilled, every pair of eyes locked on her as she struggled to push herself up on shaky elbows. She looked dazed, but when her gaze finally found mine, something flickered in her expression, something raw, ugly, furious. I knew then that she wasn't done. This wasn't over. A few minutes later, the paramedics arrived, parting the crowd as they rushed toward Brielle with their equipment. One of them, a tall man with salt and pepper hair, knelt beside her. "Ma'am, can you tell me your name?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. Brielle nodded weakly. "Brielle Carter." "Carter." My stomach twisted. She was still using James' last name. The paramedic asked her a few more routine questions before glancing at me. "Are you a relative?" I hesitated, my throat dry. "She's my sister. She's also pregnant." One of the guests chimed in, as if the paramedics couldn't already see the obvious swell of her stomach. The older medic nodded and signaled to his partner. "We need to get her to the hospital for monitoring." A stretcher was brought in, and as they lifted Brielle onto it, she turned her head toward me, her lips parting slightly. For a moment, I thought she was about to say something. An apology, a plea, an admission of guilt. But then she smirked. A small, barely there smirk. Like she had won. Like she still had something up her sleeve. And just like that, the moment shattered. I clenched my fists, watching as they wheeled her out of the hall, the doors swinging shut behind her. The murmurs in the room picked up again, hushed whispers of speculation, judgment, and morbid curiosity. I could feel the weight of their stares, but I didn't care. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked straight out of the banquet hall, the will still clutched tightly in my hand. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I walked out of the banquet hall into the cold evening air, my heels clicking against the pavement as I made my way to my car. My pulse was still pounding in my ears, my hands shaking slightly as I shoved James' will back into my purse. Brielle had planned this. She had invited me here to humiliate me, to tear open wounds that had barely begun to scab over. And yet, somehow, I had ended up delivering the final blow. But the way she had smirked at me before being wheeled out, it unsettled me. This wasn't over. It was never that simple with Brielle. I barely made it home before the first call came in. Unknown number. I let it ring out. 2 minutes later, another call. This time, from my Aunt Michelle. I answered, bracing myself. "What the HLL did you do to Brielle?" She hissed before I could even say hello. I pinched the bridge of my nose. I didn't do anything to her. She collapsed, Sienna, in the middle of her baby shower. She collapsed after I read James' will. I corrected. Maybe because she didn't get what she was expecting. A beat of silence. Then, "So it's true." Michelle's voice lowered, like she was afraid someone would overhear. "James really left you everything?" "Yes." Another pause. "Did you know about the baby?" I hesitated. "Not until tonight." Michelle let out a slow breath. "Jesus." I could hear the shift in her tone, less accusatory now, more calculating. "Look, Sienna," she said, "Brielle's in the hospital right now. Stress-induced fainting, that's what the doctors are saying. But you know how she is. She's not going to let this go." I swallowed, gripping the phone tighter. "I know. And you're sure James wasn't?" I cut her off. "Yes, I'm sure. James wasn't with Brielle. He wouldn't have done that to me. Would he?" A lump formed in my throat, but I forced it down. Michelle sighed. "Well, if I were you, I'd watch my back." The call ended, leaving me in suffocating silence. I tossed my phone onto the counter and poured myself a glass of wine, my fingers tightening around the stem as I stared out the window into the dark Charleston skyline. Brielle had wanted to destroy me tonight. Instead, she had unraveled herself. But something told me this wasn't the end. Not even close. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. My phone was vibrating nonstop, calls, texts, missed notifications from social media. I groggily reached for it, my stomach sinking as I unlocked the screen. And there it was. A headline. SCNDL, widow discovers late husband fathered sister's baby at public event. I sat up so fast I nearly dropped my phone. What the HLL? My fingers scrolled through the article at lightning speed. Sources close to the family say tensions erupted at Brielle Carter's baby shower when her estranged sister, Sienna Carter, learned the shocking truth about her late husband's secret affair. The dramatic confrontation reportedly left Brielle in distress, resulting in a medical emergency. My vision blurred. This was a lie. I hadn't just learned anything. I had been ambushed. I checked the source. It was a local gossip page, the kind that thrived on sensationalized stories and anonymous tips. My stomach twisted. This had Brielle's fingerprints all over it. The call started again. My cousin Leah, an old friend from college. Even my boss. Jesus. I threw the phone onto my bed, gripping my temples. I needed to think. But before I could, my doorbell rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Insistent. I got up slowly, my heartbeat hammering against my ribs. I already knew who it was before I even opened the door. Brielle. She stood there, pale but composed, her hands resting on her swollen stomach. She was still in hospital scrubs, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked exhausted, but her eyes? Sharp, calculating. She tilted her head. We need to talk. I folded my arms. I think we've talked enough. She let out a soft, bitter laugh. Yeah, I thought so too. A gust of wind swept between us, but neither of us moved. Then she stepped forward, lowering her voice. You might want to sit down for this one, Sienna. I stood in the doorway, gripping the edge of the frame like it was the only thing keeping me steady. Brielle was staring at me, waiting, her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smirk, but wasn't far from it either. I don't have time for more of your games, I said finally. Oh, this isn't a game. She let out a humorless laugh. Believe me, I wish it was. I should have slammed the door in her face. I should have walked away, left her standing there in the cold. But something in her voice, something I couldn't quite place, made me hesitate. That hesitation cost me. Brielle pushed past me, stepping into my house like she belonged there. I turned sharply. Are you serious right now? She made her way into my living room, settling onto the couch like she had every right to be there. Trust me, I don't want to be here either. But after last night, she trailed off, her fingers drumming against her knee. I crossed my arms, refusing to sit. After last night, what? She exhaled slowly. People are talking, Sienna. About you. About me. About James. She glanced at my phone, which was still buzzing relentlessly on the table. You've seen the article, haven't you? I clenched my jaw. Yeah, I've seen it. Good. She nodded, as if that was some kind of victory. Then you know how bad this looks. I let out a dry laugh. Bad? Brielle, you made it look like I found out about your supposed affair with my husband in the middle of your goddamn baby shower. She tilted her head. Isn't that exactly what happened? Something inside me snapped. You planned this, I hissed. You knew what you were doing the second you invited me. You wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. Her lips twitched. I won't lie. I thought it'd be fun. My hands curled into fists. But, she continued, voice smooth, it didn't go the way I expected. You had that well. You turned it on me. Because James didn't choose you, Brielle. I took a step forward, daring her to deny it. No matter what story you tried to spin, he still left everything to me. That's the truth, whether you like it or not. She met my gaze, and for the first time that night, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not anger, not smugness, fear. She swallowed, her throat bobbing. That's what I need to talk to you about. I narrowed my eyes. She reached into the pocket of her hospital scrubs and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Then she tossed it onto the coffee table between us. I didn't move to pick it up. What is that? Her voice was eerily calm. A second will. I felt my stomach drop. My fingers shook as I reached for the document. I unfolded it slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. And there it was. A new version of James' last will and testament. A version that left everything, to Brielle and her unborn child. I couldn't breathe. My head snapped up. This is fake. She tilted her head. Is it? Yes. My voice was sharp, but inside, I was spiraling. James would never. Would he? Brielle leaned back against the couch, watching me carefully. This version was drafted just a month before he died. That's not possible. Oh, but it is, she murmured. And unlike your copy, this one has witnesses. My heart slammed against my ribs. I skimmed the paper again, my vision blurring with rage. 2 signatures. Names I didn't recognize. My hands clenched around the document. You expect me to believe this? She shrugged. Believe what you want, but the courts? They might see things differently. My breath came fast, uneven. Where did you get this? She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. You forged it. My voice was deadly quiet. Her lips parted, but she didn't deny it. I felt sick. You forged my dead husband's will, I whispered. She exhaled through her nose. What I did or didn't do doesn't matter, Sienna. What matters is that this exists. And if it ends up in the right hands. She let the words hang between us, thick and suffocating. I stared at her, my body going ice cold. This is extortion. She smiled. Call it whatever you want. I took a slow, shaky breath, my mind racing. This wasn't about the money. This was about power. Brielle wanted to take everything from me. My reputation, my stability, my memories of James. And worst of all, she wanted me to know she was the one doing it. I folded the paper neatly, setting it down on the table. Then, I looked her dead in the eyes. I hope you're ready, I murmured. Her smile faltered. For what? I leaned in slightly, just enough to see the flicker of doubt in her expression. For war. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my dining table, James' real will on one side, Brielle's forged one on the other. The weight of everything she had done, the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, pressed against my chest like a vice. But I wasn't broken. No, I was something far more dangerous. I was ready. Brielle wanted a war. She was about to find out that I never fought fair. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Miriam Patel had been handling James' estate since his passing, and if there was anyone I trusted to see through Brielle's deception, it was her. You're telling me your sister produced a second will? She asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. She dropped it on my coffee table like she had won a game of poker, I said bitterly. Do you have a copy? I have the original. She left hers with me. Miriam was silent for a moment, then let out a quiet chuckle. She's an amateur. That was exactly what I was counting on. Brielle thought she could outmaneuver me. That was her first mistake. Her second? Underestimating how much people hated a fraud. The first thing I did was call in a favor from an old friend of James, Richard Lane, a well-respected attorney who had been there when James first drafted his will. When I sent him a copy of Brielle's document, his response was immediate. This is laughable, he said over the phone. The signatures are forged. The phrasing is inconsistent with legal terminology. And these so-called witnesses? One of them is a fictional character from a 1990s soap opera. I nearly choked on my coffee. So what you're saying is, it won't hold up in court. Sienna, this wouldn't hold up in a game of Monopoly. I grinned. Now, it was time to let Brielle bury herself. The next move was simple. Brielle had been so eager to make this a public spectacle, so eager to drag my name through the mud. So I let her. I arranged a family meeting at my Aunt Michelle's house. Not just with our close relatives, but with the people Brielle cared about impressing most, her wealthy in-laws, her socialite friends, even her colleagues. She arrived looking smug, wearing an expensive designer dress, as if she had already won. I let her have that moment. Then, in front of everyone, I set the trap. I pulled out both wills. I had a lawyer review your document, Brielle, I said, my voice light, almost amused. And I have to say, it's quite creative. Her smile twitched. What are you talking about? I flipped through the pages casually. Well, for starters, the witnesses. One of them doesn't exist. And the other is a former bartender who, according to public records, was fired 4 years ago for fraud. A murmur rippled through the room. Brielle's face paled. That's not. I cut her off. And the signatures? Fake. Badly faked, might I add. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I leaned forward. I have a sworn affidavit from James' real attorney, confirming that his actual will, the one legally filed and notarized, leaves everything to me. The silence was suffocating. Brielle's hands trembled in her lap. I tilted my head. You weren't very careful, were you? Her gaze darted around the room, as if searching for someone to come to her defense. No one did. Not her friends. Not her in-laws. Not even Aunt Michelle. And that's when it hit her. She had lost. The fallout was swift and merciless. Brielle's in-laws, once enchanted by her charm, quietly distanced themselves. Her friends stopped answering her calls. But the real blow? She lost her job. Apparently, her employer didn't take kindly to public fraud as scandals. She tried to fight it. Tried to spin a sob story about being a grieving woman manipulated by someone else. But the truth was out now, and no one believed her. Weeks passed before I saw her again. I was sitting on the balcony of my apartment, sipping tea, when I heard a knock at my door. I knew it was her before I even opened it. Brielle stood there, looking different, smaller, defeated. She let out a shaky breath. You destroyed me. I raised an eyebrow. No, Brielle. You destroyed yourself. She flinched. For the first time in our lives, she had no comeback. No manipulation. No plan. She just stood there, wringing her hands. She started, but her voice wavered. I sighed. What do you want, Brielle? She hesitated. I lost everything. I leaned against the doorframe. And her lower lip trembled. I don't have anywhere to go. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I stepped back and gestured inside. Brielle's eyes widened. You're letting me in. I shrugged. You're my sister. She blinked rapidly, as if she couldn't believe it. But after everything, I cut her off. You can stay for a few days. A few. Her shoulders sagged in relief. But as she stepped inside, I met her gaze. Low. Even. You will never, ever get another chance to betray me again, Brielle. She swallowed hard. I closed the door behind her. And for the first time in a long, long time, I had won.